Good morning, afternoon, and or evening to anyone that may be watching this. Hello, I am Ivan de Guzman, 11 Pascal A from Batch Arahuyo, your main host once again, and today we're going to be talking about something quite a little bit more serious as the subject matter of today is quite heavy. As I'm sure you've read by the title, today we are going to be talking about depression and anxiety, two topics that I believe, especially amongst PSI students who are extremely swamped with heavy loads of work and stress, that those two topics are very common amongst the populace of PSI. Our co-host for today, which they will refer to themselves as L in order to stay anonymous, would you like to introduce yourself in any way, L?
I'm apparently ill. I'm realizing now that I kind of have an annoying voice for podcast, and I've been officially diagnosed with depression and anxiety since I was eighth grade.
Right. So, you have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety for eighth grade, or since eighth grade, I mean. How has that been? Like, how did it start initially? Like, how did you sort of get into the thinking process of, oh, I have depression at such an early age as well? Eighth grade, that's around like what, 13, 14? 14, right?
Yeah, I was 12. I was 12.
You were 12.
No, yeah, but it took until I was about 13, 14 until I could get an official diagnosis.
Right.
So I guess how it started was I've always been a weird kid.
Mm-hmm.
To paraphrase my mother, she always says I have never been normal, which is very nice thing to hear from your beloved mother. Eh, I've always been a very nervous kid. I've always had weird physical symptoms that never seemed to lead to any sickness. My stomach always hurt. I was always nauseous. My head always hurt. Sometimes, well, most of the time, whenever I get stressed out, I would just get suddenly sick. And I wasn't faking it at all. That's what people were so surprised at, is that I was genuinely sick every single time. But
Right.
it took a long time before we could connect the dots. So I've suspected for a long time that there was something, not very normal within me. But I didn't want to. I've always had an interest in the psychology science. I've always liked studying the mental illnesses and stuff like that. But I never realized, like, consciously how vested my interest in them, because I didn't want to self-diagnose. I thought that maybe if I related to all the symptoms and I knew that something was kind of off within me, but I thought that as long as I didn't name it, it couldn't hurt me or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, in eighth grade, my grades started getting like super low. I was getting sick almost every week.
Mm-hmm.
I had to be sent home a lot because, I was a dormer in Pisay.
Right, right.
I had to be sent home a lot. So that's when we started going to a bunch of doctors. Right. And I still didn't want to admit what I had suspected. So we went to like an eye doctor, an ophthalmologist, a neurologist, a CT scan at one point, and a bunch of stuff
Mm-hmm.
happened to me. But there was nothing physically wrong with me that they could detect. And that's when my neurologist told me I should probably go see a psychiatrist.
Right.
And it took exactly one session with the psychiatrist before she was like, "Oh yeah, you
Tell
have
you, oh
anxiety,
yeah,
bro."
yeah, this kid's got depression. Yeah, she's kind
Yeah,
of, yeah.
exactly.
so, so you
Like
said that,
my psychiatrist. Go lang?
oh, okay. So you said that you sort of struggled to accept that there was something wrong with you. Is that the right term to use there? Because it sounded like
Yeah,
for a very long time you almost didn't want to believe that there was something wrong with you. Is that true in any way? Like, did you feel like
yeah. I always knew I was weird. Like, I don't know why I was considered weird until now. I don't fully get it. Why a lot of people look at me and are like off-putted by me. I don't really get it. But it's always been something that separated me from other people. And then I didn't want to consider that I maybe had a sickness. I thought since I was doing well, I made it into Pisay. And for the first while, I was getting like okay grades. I was passing naman. I was like, obviously, these aren't things that mentally ill people could do,
Yeah.
was what I thought.
Yeah,
So I was
you
like,
felt like your life was on track, so maybe feeling like there was something wrong with you. Like, no, that's impossible. There's no way.
yeah. And then when my life went off track, when I started having my symptoms, as it were, I distinctly remember it. I went to the nurse's office because I felt physically sick again. And we were waiting for my parents to come get me because I was once again too sick to stay in Pisay.
Right.
And then I looked at Mom Hazel, the nurse, and I asked her, is there any physical way you can check if you have mental illness? And she suddenly was like, excuse me? And I repeated the question. I was like, can you tell, like, physically if you have depression? And after a very long and heartfelt conversation with Mom Hazel, she called the guidance counselor down. And the guidance counselor agreed to talk to my parents. So that was a thing.
Right. So, your parents, I believe, and I don't even think I believe, I think this is just truth, but from my understanding, a vast majority of people who have had depression or still do have depression, one of the reasons or one of the things that's stopping them from either being professionally diagnosed with depression or one of the things that's stopping them from fully accepting that they have depression is their parents, no? I feel like one of the things that's affecting their judgment of their own depression is, what will my parents think? Because I believe that like among people who have had depression, that's a very common thought, right?
Yeah, and it was also like lurking in the back of my mind. At the time, my grandparents were my primary guardian. My mother was working abroad, as it were, and my grandparents are not the most woke. They're very typical for their age.
They're not very open to new ideas.
And to the new idea being that maybe kids shouldn't be going insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
They weren't very open to it. So it was a very terrifying conversation where I sat in the car on the way home from Pisay, and then I was like, Lala, the guidance counselor wants to talk to you. And she was like, oh, why? What's wrong? And I said, we think I might have depression. And then there was utter silence in the
at the time, did your Lola, it's your grandmother, right?
It's my grandma.
Yeah. At the time, did your Lola know what depression was? Like, did she have any idea of what mental illnesses were exactly?
Not very. That was the thing.
Did you have to explain it to her?
Yes. In the car. I was still eating McDonald's. It was a thing. And I had underestimated. I was terrified because I had underestimated the capacity for love and acceptance my grandparents could hold for me.
Right.
Which was that they didn't believe in depression.
Right.
But they believed in me. And I had depression. And I explained it to them. And now they're very accepting. My grandfather not so much, but now my grandmother rants all the time about how many requirements Pisay gives us and how they should give us a break. Like, she's very much now down a very wrathful path of mental wellness.
Yes, I am very much on your mom's side on that, but I think like parental acceptance is very much what's holding a lot of people who have depression back, correct? Like a lot of people who have had depression, from my experience and from my understanding of people's stories is that they're afraid of what their parents will think. They're afraid that their parents will think, oh no, you're not depressed, you're just, you're just tired, or you're not depressed, you're just stressed out. like like a lot of parents, and I'm not sure if there's a correlation between, there probably is a correlation between era and generation and the acceptance of depression, no? Because I feel like even though mental illness has been researched since the 90th, probably 20th century, I feel like only very recently has it come to light, has it sort of become a very serious discussion amongst people who actually have it, because people are starting to record studies, people are starting to see like genuine physical symptoms, because I believe that at least in medicine you're only really treated when you have physical symptoms, or when you're actually being, your real life is being affected by what you have. And so before, when you had a broken leg, people would be like, oh, you should go get yourself fixed. But you can't see depression, right?
Yes, exactly.
Depression isn't a visible thing. You can't see anxiety. You can't see if someone is deeply, deeply sad. Like, you can't see that. You can see a broken leg, you can see a tumor in a brain, you can see all these different kinds of diseases that have physical symptoms, but depression isn't something you can see. And because of that, a lot of people have this stigma that it's just not a thing. You're making it up. It's not real. You're just sad.
That's a logical fallacy if you think about it. Like, these people are so arrogant as to believe that every organ can fail except the brain, the
Yeah,
most complicated one. You think that one can fail? Like,
it's like it's like it, it's almost as if people don't want to believe that you can be so incredibly overwhelmed by life, or just people in general, or just the different aspects of like stress and anxiety and burnout, that like you can't be actually affected by it. Like, they just believe, oh no, you're fine, just go to sleep, just rest, you're just sad, you're just tired, you're just exhausted, you just need a break and it'll all go away. And okay, I know that, do you know this guy named Prince EA? I believe that's his name.
no,
Or
doesn't
it's
ring a
just this, he's, I don't know if that's his name, but his name starts with Prince. I believe it's Prince EA, but he was very popular on YouTube for a while, because he made very, albeit altruistic, motivational videos. He was basically like the epitome of a motivational, positive, optimistic public speaker. And I remember him very vividly because he made a video on depression. It was a while ago. I was in elementary when I watched that video, but I watched the video, and at the time I didn't understand it. And then I went back to it a few years ago in high school, and then I watched it again, and then I realized how terrible the video was, because one of the things he literally says in the video is,
sorry you cut off.
oh yeah, I apologize. So he, Prince EA, he made a video on depression, and I went back to it in high school after I sort of understood what mental illness was, and he essentially compared depression to like clouds. And let me give you the analogy that this is just from memory, so it's probably not 100% accurate, but this is essentially what he said in the video. Imagine that depression is like clouds. It comes and it goes, and then it comes again, and then it stays for a while, and then it goes. But eventually, depression does leave, and it's like and something never really felt right, because it was like, that's not how depression works. It doesn't just come and go and then come and go. it's like an actual illness. Like sure, it
Yeah,
eventually it leaves, eventually, but it's not like clouds that just come like out of nowhere and then eventually if you wait enough, if we wait long enough, it just leaves. Like that's not how that works.
exactly. So I feel like a lot of people often forget that depression and anxiety and all these other mental illnesses, because I do believe that there's a dearth of conversation around the different mental illnesses apart from depression and anxiety. But all of these are really just disorders, diseases of the brain, right? They're just sicknesses, and a lot of people equate depression to feelings, which it does affect your emotions quite a bit. That's the main symptom that people have, right? Is the emotional aspect of it. But it very much is a sickness and it's treatable. I first went on SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or something like that, in eighth grade. I was on a very low dose at the time, but it improved my life immensely. It wasn't even the, like a lot of people say that the psychiatric meds are just like the placebo effect. It wasn't the placebo effect because I had to try so many different medications, and they didn't work until we found one that did. And then that one, it really just felt like I was being cured slowly. It felt like every symptom was like lessening until I was, you know, actually well. And then I continued to be well until about 10th grade, where I proceeded to go insane again. And now I'm back on them. And oh my God, things are so clear. It is so nice.
I mean, overall, I just believe that like in order to get rid of this stigma that mental illness isn't a thing or mental illness isn't real, we need to have more conversations about it. We need to talk about it seriously. We need to actually like sit down with people and be open that hey, I don't feel quite right, right? Like I think a lot of people, I mean ultimately from my understanding it comes down to two things. It's either pride or fear. You're either too prideful to admit that aside from like a broken arm, there's something wrong with your head, or you are too fearful of how other people will react to you if you tell them that, hey, I have a mental illness, or hey, I have depression, or hey, I struggle with anxiety. I think it's either pride or fear that sort of sets people back. And in that sense, I do want to say like there's nothing wrong with admitting that there is something wrong with you mentally. You know, like there like nothing is going to help you. Like you're not gonna fix yourself magically by just holding that in, by keeping that bottled up that you are not well in your head. It's not a it's not a good thing to do. It's definitely not helpful to you. It doesn't help you in any way. It doesn't help the people that matter to you. It doesn't help the people that want to help you. That don't you don't accept that you have depression, or that you are too scared to tell other people that you have depression. So, uh, it, so I believe that people really need to start being more open about what they're struggling with. It doesn't matter if you're afraid. It doesn't matter if you are too prideful to admit that there's something wrong with you. You need to be open about it. And I think one thing that helps is, and this is something I'd like to ask you in particular, is a support group, or just a group of people. Like it doesn't even have to be like, I'm not talking about like a cancer support group online, you know, like no, it's okay, you know. I'm talking about like tell your friends, like tell a number of your friends that hey, I'm struggling with depression and anxiety. Tell your family, hey, I'm struggling with depression and anxiety. And, you know, hear them out, listen to what they have to say, and then if they can support you, if they can be there for you, then that's amazing. That helps a lot with depression. So I want to ask you in particular, did you have a set or specific support group that helped you out? And if so, could you tell me about them?
Yeah, so my friends, I'm not gonna name any names, but a lot of them, like not a lot, some of them aren't very, very clear as in regards to mental health. They're not
Mm-hmm.
very well versed in it.
Yeah.
But what I always, what I'm always very grateful for is that I was always believed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a luxury that not a lot of mentally ill people get. Is that I was always believed, apart from like maybe two times in my life where someone thought I was faking it. For the most part, everybody I told believed it, and that's a miracle, honestly. And I'm sorry to say that it doesn't happen that way for a lot of people.
Right.
So the support group I had was composed of my friends at school, my mom, and eventually, when she came to be more accepting, my grandmother, right? And they they were instrumental in my healing, but they weren't the only thing. Like they were instrumental, but they weren't the most necessary thing. I think the most necessary thing for me was to get professional help. I,
Right.
of course, needed the support of my parents and my friends and stuff, but the thing I needed most was just first the guidance counselor saying they understood my experience, and then the psychiatrist saying, validating me, basically validating my struggle, saying it's not your fault. There actually is just some chemicals not going directly into your brain, and that's what helped mostly. Like, okay, I just wanted to say that it doesn't have to be like a super serious mental illness for you to get help, right?
Right.
You're not stealing resources from anybody. You can, even if you're just like feeling a little down, even if it's just, even if you think it's a temporary thing, even if you haven't felt physical symptoms yet, even when it's not bad enough to be considered mental illness, because it becomes a mental illness when it's unmanageable, basically. Even when it's manageable, you can always take the help that is offered to other people, because even if you don't think you need it, if you find yourself having a difficult time without it, then I would say you do need it and you should go ahead and receive it. I say this as an actually diagnosed person. A lot of people, a lot of mentally ill people feel that they aren't being taken seriously, which is true, right? But then they kind of put all that energy in not being taken seriously to trying to weed out the fakers. I believe that that's never been like a priority. I think that if someone is faking depression, then obviously there's something else wrong, right? You
Right.
don't just fake depression for no reason. So I think whatever it is, you have to get to the bottom of it, yeah? You have to figure out what is causing this and fix it. And I think the people who are always so scared of people faking depression to get leniency or whatever severely overestimate the leniency us mentally ill people get. There's not a lot, you know.
Right.
It, it doesn't actually no one gives us money or anything.
Like you're not on disabled benefits for having depression, you know?
No, I am though.
You are?
I am. There's a specific one called psychosocial disease where you can put that. But it is so embarrassing using it in public because then they're like, oh my god, she's insane.
Damn. I should
Yeah,
sign
I
up
am
for
because
that.
I have to buy medication and Zoloft, my
Right.
king, my beloved, is expensive. So yeah. But
This is just for the audience, though. By the way, don't actually sign up if you don't have depression, please.
don't be a dick.
I'm joking. Don't do it if you don't actually need the money for depression. But anyway, continuing on.
Yeah, I just think that I feel like I had a classmate, I had a batchmate, right, who was going through much the same things I did, but people didn't take her as seriously as they did me because I was very dark. I remember the first time you ever spoke to me. The first time you ever spoke to me, you said I looked depressed. Those were the first words I think that you ever spoke to me, specifically you, Ivan.
Me? Really?
Yeah, it was you.
No, you know what?
I'm
No,
pretty
no,
sure.
I do remember. You know what? I vividly remember that because that was immediately after you and I argued, and then like
About feminism.
about feminism, yeah, and then the second time around, yeah, I think you were like like head level deep in a book, like you were reading a book, and then I just went up, I just looked at you across the room, and then I told you you look depressed.
Yeah, that's one of our first conversations,
I
and
mean, was I
people,
wrong?
you apparently weren't, as it turns out. But yeah, I feel like people took me seriously because the way I presented was like very serious, very inwardly directed. And because my symptoms were very like obvious. But someone who was also, going through depression in the same year that I was,
Mhm.
they weren't being taken seriously. People were making fun of them behind their backs, which was honestly like that was so weird. And it turns out that they were put on antidepressants like around the same time I did.
Mhm.
So I kind of bonded with them, like, hey, medicated people,
Right.
But it always stuck with me how not everybody, and
Mhm.
most people actually, don't get the luxury that I did of being believed.
Right. So ultimately, I think it comes down to we really do need to be more open about depression and anxiety. Like, it's
Yes.
not talked about enough. We need to talk about it more. We need to be more open about it. We need people to start believing that it is a real serious issue that actually affects people. And like before, people believed, oh, you don't have a broken leg, you're fine. But now depression does actually have physical symptoms. A lot of studies show that depression very much has an actual influence on your physicality and your life. It shows reduced productivity. It either makes you sleep too much or too less. It increases your appetite or severely decreases your appetite. It affects so many aspects of your life, and I believe that it really is a sickness, a disease, an illness, a disorder that needs to be addressed. Now,
Yeah, exactly. Because what it is, right? What it is serotonin, and serotonin kind of is a balancing chemical. It kind
mhm,
of like just helps you balance everything. That's why my antidepressants, they don't actually make me happy. I'm sorry, guys. Other drugs can make you happy, but they're illegal and you might die. Antidepressants don't make you happy. It just makes you normal. And
right,
then once you're on that like normal kind of floor space, then you can work on being happy.
right. Um, Happiness. It's a thing that like. I don't think anyone would say no to happiness. I think a lot of people, for many different reasons, they're not happy. For one, I think I've heard many stories of Pisai students having severe depression because, you know, Pisai. I mean, ultimately, the extreme stress and workload that such a advanced education system puts on what is essentially a preteen, or like you're grade 7, grade 8, you're not even a proper teenager yet. Grade 9, grade 10, you are a teenager, but you're still going through some stuff. Grade 11 to 12, you're basically pre-adult. It's a combination of it's really not the best time to be going through such an insane amount of stress when your body is changing in so many different ways, and yet at the same time you are going through a lot of stress. So ultimately, it's okay to it's okay to have depression. Like you don't have to be prideful in the idea that, oh no, nothing's wrong with me, I'm fine. I'm fine. Those two words have always had like a I've always had like a sore spot for those two words, I'm fine. Because I think in 90% of the cases that people who have mental illnesses say the words I'm fine, they're not. They're really not. I don't think you would
Well,
ever like
now.
yeah, I don't think you would ever hear a genuinely depressed person say the words I'm fine. Like if a depressed person was getting better, they would say, "Oh, yeah, I'm getting better." Like, "Oh, yeah, I'm recovering. Oh, yeah, I feel better." They would never say I'm fine, you know? Like
So I would say that I have like my sickness is a comorbidity of sorts, right? It's anxiety and depression
mhm,
with certain symptoms, right? So I am happy now, and I genuinely think I'm fine,
mhm,
but I wouldn't say that I'm not mentally ill, and it's always going to affect me. It, you know,
right.
like any, what do you call that? Like any chronic disease, it will continue affecting me for what is probably going to be the rest of my life.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I do genuinely think that there is a point where you can be fine. Like, I don't want to really hammer on this idea that depression means you're not okay.
Yeah,
Depression might mean you're not okay in the moment, but it can be okay. Depression isn't going to be a forever thing.
right.
You just have to write it out, you have to get help, and eventually things do actually get better. They don't get better by themselves. You have to like actually go out and do
You
things
have to put in
make you
an
get better.
effort.
Like, do you know how pissed I was when I started exercising because my psychiatrist told me to, and it actually made me feel better? I
Yeah,
was
it
so
does.
mad because, like, that's what everyone tells you. Everyone says, "Oh, go exercise; it'll make you feel better." And in the depths of your depression, you want to say, "No, it won't. Exercise can't fix me." And then you
Exercise
start,
sucks. Sweating?
yeah,
Ew.
yeah, but then you start taking walks, and you're like, "Oh God, this works, doesn't it?"
Oh wow, this why does this feel good? Wait.
Endorphins. I like in the depths of my pandemic depression, which I'm sure we all kind of went through.
Yeah.
In the depths of my pandemic depression, I was looking for just happy chemicals anywhere. I
Mhm.
was eating chocolate like so much. I didn't even want to eat chocolate. To this day, I don't like chocolate. I never have. It was just I was craving the chemicals in the chocolate so bad
Mhm.
that I ate it by the handful. And I was taking walks wherever I can. And I was
Right.
just eating delicious food and all of that because it was all in an effort to feel okay,
Right.
like, and it works is the horrible thing. Like, you want to say when you're you want to say I will never get better because it really does feel like that. You want to say I will never get better, it
Mhm.
will always be this bad, everyone who isn't taking me seriously is a pussy and I hate them.
Mhm.
But then you actually like start taking advice and you start working on yourself, maybe you journal, you keep a diary, you make art or
Mhm.
whatever, and then it works. Annoyingly, it works. And then you're like a better, more well rounded person.
Right. I mean, ultimately, get professional help. Seek a support group. Accept that you have depression or accept that you're not mentally well. You don't even need depression to accept that you're not mentally well. And just put
Mm-hmm.
in an effort, exercise, do whatever you can. Put in an effort to actually become happy. Like a lot of
It
people.
is hard.
Mhm.
Like, I will not understate it. It is so hard. In the depths of my depression, it kind of feels, spoon theory? Do you know about spoon theory?
No, I'm not familiar.
So spoon theory is a big thing in the disabled community, which, as a neurodivergent person, I'm sort of a part of.
Mm-hmm.
The disabled community has this thing called spoon theory, where you only have a limited number of spoons to get through the day. They're like points in a video game where you only have a limited amount of actions you can take.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're out, you're out. And some actions take a bigger amount of spoons. Some actions are just like a little spoon. So like say in the depths of my depression, I maybe had 3 spoons
Mm-hmm.
a day, right? And I would use these spoons to like eat, maybe do homework,
Right.
and that was it. I
You
would
only
be
have like a set amount of energy per day.
Yeah, and I would waste it all on homework,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And then I couldn't even shower sometimes. I couldn't even shower some days.
Right.
And I couldn't, after doing my homework or whatever, I would lay on the bed and just not get up. And I couldn't do anything. There was one point where I was so depressed that I was hungry and I wanted an egg and I couldn't cook an egg. And I burst into tears. And my grandmother was like, "Why are you crying?" I was like, "I can't cook an egg." And she cooked an egg for me because I couldn't cook an egg. It
Sunny
was
side
so
up,
pathetic.
boiled.
Yeah, yeah, it was just scrambled. It's the easiest egg. Couldn't do it. But yeah, it is so difficult. But like once you start taking steps to get better, your spoons start increasing. And then one magical day, you don't have spoons at all. One magical day, it just happens that I don't have a limited amount of energy anymore. I'm like a normal teenager where I
Right.
can go out and read a book and do my homework and then I still have enough energy to like do things.
Mm-hmm.
Magical. That's what life is supposed to be. You're supposed to have
Mm-hmm.
this amount of energy with which to do things, this amount of spoons. It's not supposed to be limited. And that's a thing I didn't realize until I truly got better.
Right. Ultimately, depression it's not something that anyone can benefit from in any way. I think depression is something that a lot of people will go through, might go through, or do go through. And the only thing you can do to get past it is make an effort to become happy again. Because whatever it is that's causing your depression, you have to learn to get past it. You have to learn to adjust to it. You have to learn that it's not forever. Eventually, you are going to get help. Eventually, you are going to have friends and family that support you. And eventually, you are going to be happy again. So you need to remember that.
Yes, it does get better. Don't kill yourself. That is, my mom likes to rub it in my face all the time. Every time I have a happy experience, like I go, this food is tasty or whatever. Every time I have a happy experience, my mom goes, "You sure are glad you didn't kill yourself in grade 8, are you?"
Right.
Like, and it's true. I am glad. There was like the summer between grade 8 and grade 9, a friend called me literally every day just to check if I was still alive.
Right,
It
right.
got that bad. Like, people were like, "Hey, just checking." You're like, okay,
Hey,
right?
hey, just
You
checking
know?
in. You're alive, right? Like you're not dead or anything. Like,
One time I spent too long in the bathroom and they called the door manager to come get me because they're like, "Hey, excuse me, po,
hey,
just in case."
you're taking a little bit too long there. Maybe she drowned. I don't know.
Like, just, hey, just checking in. Uh, but yeah, it's never forever. It's never forever. And I think I read somewhere that they did like studies, and most people who try to kill themselves like start to regret it a bit of the way through.
Yeah.
Like people who jump off of bridges and stuff, before they hit the water, they start regretting because you don't want to die. Not
Right.
really.
I
Not
mean,
death you
your
want.
body
You
has
just
a
want
natural.
the,
Mhm.
yeah. You just want the pain to end.
Right.
And let me tell you, death is not the way, especially if you're Catholic. If you kill yourself, you're going to hell. So if you want the pain to end, yeah, don't die. Is
It's
my advice.
like depression, how your brain reacts to it is that it doesn't want depression, right? It's not like it doesn't want to live. Your brain never thinks your brain never thinks I don't want to live. That's impossible. Because brains are hardwired with the self-preservation instinct. That's the reason why animals have continued to live for this long, is because animals have a natural instinct to, hey, I don't want to die. So it's impossible. Like, you can think, I want to die. You can think, oh, I want to commit suicide. But your brain, it is impossible for your brain to fully accept suicide because it goes against all the laws that your brain follows. Your brain follows, oh, I am a living being, I should stay alive. That is the law that your brain follows, your self-preservation instinct. But you, on the other hand, you want to die, not because you want to die, but because, like Elle said, you want the pain to end. You don't want to suffer like this anymore. You don't want to have depression. So, suicidal ideation or suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts, it's not a product of you wanting to die. It's a product of your brain wanting to be happy again. It's a product of your brain not wanting to
You
have
can't
depression.
anymore. Ganun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, while the thing is that admitting you have depression is very different from admitting you have suicidal ideation. I managed to do one way before I managed to do the latter, right? Because, like, saying I was depressed was relatively, it was still very hard, but it was relatively easy. I just listed off symptoms. I was like, I can't eat anymore. I can never sleep. I can't do this or that or this or that. I'm not happy anymore
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. But there's sort of like a stigma around suicide, right? Or suicidal ideation, where you don't want to say it out loud because just in case they might send you to a facility,
Or a mental
right?
hospital or asylum.
Yes. Like, I never wanted to say it, but one time my counselor asked me outright, hey, do you experience suicidal ideation?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, like an idiot, I said, don't we all? And
And she
he went
took that extremely seriously.
badly. It's exactly. He
Yeah.
went, hell, no, we don't. No, it's not normal. And then they called my parents, and then they told my parents,
That you had
they told
suicidal
my mom
ideation.
specifically that I was having suicidal ideation. And my mom, who is also an idiot
Mm-hmm.
and who has the same illnesses I do, went, don't we all at that age?
Like mother, like daughter, you know?
Yeah. And the counselor was very concerned at both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, talagang there were questions that day. There sure were. But, I think we should be more open about suicide because it is very serious. It's a very serious topic.
Right.
But I think we shouldn't be so scared to say it because suicidal ideation is not the same as like having a plan. My psychiatrist told me that if I just told her I was having suicidal ideation, that's pretty normal, that's pretty common among clients. But you just can't say, hey, I'm planning to kill myself at X time,
Mm-hmm.
at X place, in this location, with this specific knife. If you detail out that you have a plan, they'll decide, oh, you're a danger to yourself. And
Right.
then that's when you get asylumed or whatever. But if you're just like, hey, just generally, like in my everyday life, I feel like dying, then they can get you the help that you need if you do have suicidal ideation. You can just be open about it. And, you might be like me, where you're like, I think this is normal. It's not. Like, jokes about it have normalized it to a degree, but constantly thinking about it every day, that's not normal, bro.
Right.
Go get help,
If
my
you
homie.
if you have genuine thoughts about dying or about killing yourself or about committing suicide, please, please go get professional help. It's
Exactly.
as much as people joke about it, it's not normal. If you have
Yeah.
suicidal thoughts, if you have this idea, if you have this mentality that if you died, the pain would go away, please, please go seek help. Professional help.
Yes. For a long time, I just told like friends who are my age, I was like 12 and 11 and stuff. I would be like 12, and I would say to the other 12-year-old, hey, I want to die. And 12-year-olds aren't very equipped for that.
Mm-hmm.
They should probably go to talk to like professional adults. Even adults aren't very equipped for that. Like I told my mom, and she kind of just went, well, what do we do now? Do you want ice cream? We got ice cream. Ice cream is a temporary solution, but it does work also. Go get yourself ice cream.
Ultimately, depression just makes your brain thirsty for dopamine. Your brain just really wants that sweet, sweet dopamine. It wants to be happy. Your brain wants to enjoy life. Your brain wants the idea that life is enjoyable. I want to continue living life because life allows you to experience dopamine. So in any way
Yes,
that you can get it, go get it. Exercise, talk to your friends, play video games, read manga, comic books, draw, play the piano, do whatever it is that makes you happy, that allows you to enjoy life.
can I say something that Pisai admin won't necessarily like? It's not
Yeah.
inappropriate, but
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, go
think they
ahead.
will like.
Yeah.
I think for specific Pisai scholars, this advice doesn't apply to everybody, but I think it's a significant part of us. I think it is very helpful to care less about your grades. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to clarify my statement.
No,
I,
I agree. I agree.
yes, I cared so much about my grades, so much that, I did have limited spoons, I had limited energy, and I spent all of them on grades instead of trying to get better. So I just got worse and worse. And because I was getting worse, my grades started falling. You
Mm-hmm.
know what happened? As soon as I started getting help, I focused less on work because I was using my energy on things like getting better and like
Mm-hmm.
doing fun things, right? But my grades started going up.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like you're struggling, if you feel like you're always eternally trying to catch up and you can't catch up and it just feels like you can't handle school anymore, I would suggest maybe getting like a hobby or something, like doing something fun. I know it seems counterproductive because it takes away from actual school time, but that's it. If you dedicate all of your limited energy to school time and you can't do anything else, you will just get worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
But if you sacrifice your grades in the present to work on getting better, now I'm getting like the highest grades I've ever had since I was like in sixth grade, because this started when I was in sixth grade, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like it only took about like 2 quarters of sacrificing my grades. I was still passing, but it wasn't as high as I would have liked it to be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, just about 2 quarters of sacrificing my grades, and now it is so easy to keep up.
Yeah.
Like, I actually feel a little bit cheated. Like, do most of you feel like this? Do most of the populace, are they just able to do Rex without like agonizing over it for 3 hours? You can just do Rex, because that's how I feel right now. I can just like, if I decide to, hey, I can do this Rex, I can just do it. It's like magic, and it only took about 2 quarters of sacrifice.
Using all your spoons to focus completely and only on academic work is like taking one step forward and 5 steps back. It's like, yeah, you're gonna be able
Yes,
to keep up your grades, but ultimately, your mental health is gonna tank, and so will your grades. Like, like focusing completely on academics when you have mental issues is fighting a losing battle. It's like trying to swim in quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. You're not you, you have to focus on getting out of that quicksand first. before you start swimming, you
And
know?
there's a very good quote I read somewhere. I'm gonna paraphrase it because I don't remember it exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't take that rest now, if you don't take that time off now, your body will take it forcibly for you in the future. If you keep working and working, you will get burnout. And it is not pretty. It is so difficult. If you just keep and keep on just trying and trying and trying without giving yourself, you will eventually run out of like fuel. It's like the body's reaction to starvation,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you starve yourself, then your body will start
Eating
eating yourself,
itself. Yeah.
basically
It
eating
starts
itself.
eating its own uh it starts eating your fat, your muscles. It starts
Yeah.
consuming itself to produce energy.
So that's why it is like, even if you have like 700 recs due next week, if you genuinely can't handle it anymore, if you genuinely can't handle it anymore, I am giving you, random person on the internet who you don't know, am giving you full permission to take a nap. Just
Mm-hmm.
take the nap. It's gonna be okay. Like, I've had so many mental issues for the past 3 years and they haven't kicked me out yet. I don't think they'll kick you out. It'll be fine.
Speaking on that, academic failure, because obviously today's topic isn't just depression, it's also anxiety, and I'd like to talk about that a little more. I personally struggle a lot with anxiety, specifically anxiety caused by my fear of academic failure. I have a lot of dreams and ambitions, uh, and I have a lot of plans for the future. And because of that, I have a lot of anxiety about what the future brings. Specifically, I have a lot of anxiety about failing. I have a lot of fear about not living up to expectation, not living up to my own expectations of myself. Not, I have a lot of expectations for myself. I have a lot of plans in the future, but none of those plans I'll be able to do if I fail. And so, very recently, I've been having a lot of issues with anxiety about not keeping up, about failing, about not being able to handle what comes at me. And so, I'd like to ask you personally, Elle, about your experience with anxiety. How has that affected you in your life? How has anxiety affected your performance? How has it affected your mindset? Just tell me about it.
So my anxiety, I had it since I was little, right?
Mm-hmm.
It runs in the family, I'm pretty sure. Like, we're all very nervous kind of people. We're a nervous people, and I've had it since I was a kid. I've kind of, in my way, learned to cope with it now. But before I had learned to cope with it, it would it got to the point where I became depressed. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like the depression doesn't necessarily run in our family, but it was a comorbidity symptom that came about as a result of my anxiety. And I'm just gonna say this, right? So my anxiety, it makes me think, right, at every point that the world could end. I'm like, if I don't do this, the world will end. I don't consciously think it,
Mm-hmm.
but like subconsciously, I am convinced that if I make a mistake, the world will end. So what I like to do as a practice is think about the worst case scenario. It is never as bad as the worst case scenario,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, for example, like, I was talking about, I was very worried about failing, right? I was like, because I'm taking time off to recover, I'm failing math. And then because I have anxiety, I sort of snowballed it. I'm like, I'm gonna fail math, and because I fail math, I'm gonna fail Pisay, and because I fail Pisay, I'm not gonna get into college, and because I don't get into college, I'm not gonna have a job, and I'm gonna die alone, and the world is gonna end,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like that was my thought. And then my therapist said to me, Zoe, if you fail math, the worst thing that will happen is that you have failed math. That's it. they're not gonna kick you out. You're still gonna get into college, and even if they kick you out of PISA, you're gonna get into college. Like now, now my problem right now is that I'm not sure if I'm going to get into UP, which is my college of choice, UP Diliman,
Right.
right? And then I was stressing about this. I was doing my, my anxiety snowballing kind of thing. And my mom went, Zoe, no matter what college we put you in, even if it's just like a shitty little small college somewhere, you're going to be a doctor. What was this for? It was for, like what you said about your goals, right? I'm assuming that they're in some way academic or professional goals. All of these little goals that come before that big goal aren't like necessary. They would make it easier. They're certainly like the clearest path to success, but they're not the only path to success.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario, when you really think about it, is never actually that bad. It can always be manageable. My mom has this favorite saying, which is that you can solve anything except death. Why she always said it to me when I would be suicidal. No, all of you're being suicidal, or you're having these mental issues because you have these problems. So you want to solve these problems, and for some reason you've turned to suicide. But that won't be solving the problem.
That's just
That's
running
actually,
away.
yeah, and that's actually the only problem you can't solve is death. That's the only problem you can't solve.
Right.
Anything beyond that, there's a way to take yourself out of it. It's gonna be fun, like I swear.
So, depression, put in an effort to become happy, do whatever it is that you can to get as much dopamine as you can, work on yourself to fix yourself. Don't stress about academics. Don't stress about things that are pulling you back. Don't stress about failure. It'll only feed into your anxiety, which will make your depression worse. Focus on yourself. Focus on being well mentally, because depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation or a suicidal mentality, those are all real, genuine, and serious issues that need to be addressed, especially using professional help and with the help of a support group. And most of all, understand two things. You are not alone, and it will end eventually. One day, you're not gonna suffer. One day, you're not gonna be as sad or as nervous or as fearful as you are now. One day, you are going to be strong, confident, and happy. And you have to remember that.
I'm gonna say this, right? So you remember me in like 7th grade. I was like a nervous little chihuahua. And I was severely depressed.
Yes.
And all of that. And I can speak to my behavior then, that I had low grades consistently. I never spoke in class. I argued with a lot of people because I was always angry. Like inside of me, I was very full of wrath.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't fun to be around. People actually kept going up to me and saying they thought I was a bitch. People kept being surprised that I was nice, because apparently my expression and general demeanor all gave off the aura of bitchiness. But now, just how much time has it been? It's only been like 4 years, right? Just
5.
4 years later, I am so much better.
Right.
I smile genuinely now. I am less nervous, still nervous, but less nervous. Did you know I couldn't order from fast food restaurants when I was in 7th grade?
Like you
Because
couldn't
of how
go up on the line and order for
I
yourself.
could not. Ivan, I swear I couldn't. I would get heart attack.
No, yeah, I believe you. You seem like the type of person.
I am kind of offended, but you're right. I couldn't do
At
it.
the time, you seem
And
way
now-
more confident now.
Yeah, and now I actually talked to my friends' parents because they were afraid they had mental issues. and they didn't want to tell their mom. So I was like, hey, give the phone to me. I'll talk to your mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something a severely anxious person does.
Yeah.
It gets better. I was very, very bad in seventh grade. And
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're good. We're good.
Be strong, be confident, and be happy. You have to put in an effort, and ultimately, everything, and I mean everything, starts with you and you alone. Nothing
Yeah.
moves if you don't. So, on that note, I would like to end the episode here.